Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is episode 99 called Susie. This episode is sponsored by Binto, personalized supplements for your body and no one else's. Binto is the women's health company on a mission to help women everywhere get access to safe and effective over-the-counter products alongside access to licensed healthcare professionals at an all-attainable price point. Binto is a monthly subscription of personalized vitamins made just for you. They deliver right to your door each month, so you never have to think about reordering your supplements. Each packet comes individually wrapped with your name on it, so it's easy to stick to your vitamin routine and actually enjoy taking them every day. Here's how it works. Go to mybinto.com, take the health survey, and get matched to your personalized supplement routine. The short survey will ask you questions about your general wellness and reproductive health, including where you are on the fertility journey and how Binto can support you. You'll get matched to a suite of supplements just for your needs, and you'll get access to real, licensed healthcare professionals who will help you every step of the way. Binto is founded by Susie Welsh Devine, a fertility nurse who realized women were doing a lot of the guesswork themselves and waiting too long to get answers. Binto's healthcare providers offer online chat support and telehealth appointments to make sure you feel supported, informed, and empowered when it comes to your health. They are organic, vegan-friendly, and gluten-free, and are completely safe to take while trying to conceive and alongside fertility medications. If you'd like to try your personalized Binto supplement routine, go to mybinto.com today and use code INFERTILEAF at checkout to get 20% off your first month. Up your glow with Binto. Okay, guys, I am so excited about my guest today. Susie Welsh Devine is a fertility and IVF nurse and the founder and CEO of Binto, and she has dedicated her career to reinventing the way women take care of their health. So I met Susie through Binto, who has been a longtime supporter of this podcast and has also worked with Fertility Rally. And it's interesting because although she started out as a fertility and IVF nurse, she's now on the other side and she's going through IVF herself. So today, Susie is going to tell us all about her journey, which includes endometriosis, uterine polyp, loving her body, but also hating it at the same time, a miscarriage that she had last summer, and what's going on now with her and her husband. So it's an incredible story. She is so pro-women, and I love her, and she's breaking ground in terms of women's health and doing all this great stuff through Binto. So I'm super excited to have her on the show. And without further ado, this is Susie's infertility story. So Susie, hi, it's so good to talk to you.
I know. You too, Allison. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thank you so much for doing this. So I know a little bit about your story just from talking to you before we started recording and reading up on you on the Binto website, because you are a founder of Binto, which we'll get into a little bit later. But I'd love to start with, you've got endometriosis, right?
Yes.
So let's start there. When did you find out that you had it? Was it like in your teen years, or was it later in life, or how did that go down?
No, it was all pretty shocking. Full disclosure, I'm actually a fertility and IVF nurse.
That's right. You are,
like
which is so cool. I'm so excited to talk to you from like all the different angles.
I know. It's very odd to be in the patient seat now, I guess I would call it. I've had
because you're also going through IVF.
Exactly. So it's a very interesting perspective to see it from both sides. But
I'm sure.
Yeah, I never thought that I was going to be in this situation. Of course, you know, when my husband and I started trying, it took me like 6 months to convince him. I'm like, please, you know, it could take us a long time.
It took you to convince him to start?
Yes.
Okay.
And I was like, let's just start now.
Yeah.
So, you know, it took him time to be like, okay, we're in a good spot to try.
Yeah. It's a big jump for a lot of guys. Yeah. My husband was kind of the same.
Definitely. I think it is. And, you know, being the founder of a startup, I think I'm very comfortable with risk. And I think he's very risk averse. So, and, you know, I think a lot of men think that it'll happen right away.
Right.
And for us, it did not. And we started trying in late December, early January, 2019, 2020. So a year ago.
Okay.
And January didn't get pregnant, but I started noting this really strange, like burning, cramping in my uterus. And I've never had this before. And it was happened the week leading up to my period. So I thought like, oh, good, it's implantation cramping. I'm pregnant. We didn't get pregnant. Tried again in February, same thing, except the burning got a little bit more intense and started earlier. And that month we actually had a chemical pregnancy, found that out, I guess like March 3rd. So this is all right before the shutdown.
Right.
And I emailed one of our scientific advisory board members, Dr. Maureen Kelly. And I said, hey, Maureen, am I psycho because I'm a fertility nurse, or like, should I be concerned that something's wrong? And she said, why don't you come in? And I went in, my husband had a semen analysis. When I started bleeding, I did my day 3 blood work, and we went in for an ultrasound, and we found a uterine polyp. And, we thought it was the uterine polyp. And then eventually in the summer, after I'd had that polyp removed and the burning cramping came back, we figured that it was very likely that I have endometriosis. And we uncovered some other symptoms that I didn't really put 2 and 2 together. Sometimes sex is painful for me or uncomfortable, like pressure, but I never really associated that as pain. And I did have cramps, but everything was so balanced for me because of Binto. I think
Yeah. So for people who are listening who might not know, tell us what is Binto and how did you, I would also love to backtrack and find out when you became a fertility nurse and why you decided to go down that road. So I guess let's just back up a little bit if you don't mind.
Yes. I think that would be helpful for all of our listeners. So I went to nursing school undergrad. At UVA, I finished, I came to Philadelphia, which is where I am today. And I started working for Hahnemann University Hospital in labor and delivery, postpartum. And then I did NICU nursing. So that's the neonatal intensive care unit.
Those people are angels.
Yeah. So many cute babies. So that was really fun for me. But along the way, I worked with a lot of nurses who were struggling with fertility. And it was something that was extremely fascinating to me. And just how conception works. Why do some couples struggle when they're seemingly healthy, whereas others, are fine? So it's always been at the top of my mind, and women's health is my passion. I went to Africa when I was young, and I knew that's what sparked me on this journey into healthcare and women's health. And from there, I got into grad school at the University of Pennsylvania, and I also got a job offer at the same time to go work at their fertility clinic as an IVF nurse and patient educator. Okay. So I did both of those at the same time. I was young, I'd say 24.
Wow.
And looking back, I thought I understood the pain and the grief and the suffering that my patients go through or, went through, past tense. But until living it, you don't really understand. I'm very empathetic. And I think, I had a very close relationship with many of my patients. Some were at my wedding. I still talk to many of them. I do have that ability, but, I really do believe now that until you go through it, it is impossible to understand.
Yeah, I think so as well.
The mental health impact that this diagnosis has on people.
Yes,
so
exactly.
Extremely painful. But I worked there for 3 years, and that's what gave me the idea for Binto. And Binto stands for bun in the oven.
I never knew that.
Yes, I know. It's so silly.
That's so cool. I like that.
Oh, thank you.
How did I not put that together?
We don't really talk about it because someone has the trademark for bun in the oven, the phrase. Okay. So we own the trademark for Binto, but someone else owns the phrase. And
okay, that makes sense.
Yes. So the same time I was working at Penn Fertility, I was in a program at Wharton, and it was an entrepreneurship program. I had this idea, and I knew I wanted to make a subscription service that personalized over-the-counter products to help women navigating the fertility journey. As a nurse, you field so many questions.
And being in the field, you probably saw there was a hole in the market for that too, right?
Completely.
Like there was a huge
nothing
need.
6 years. I came up with this idea 6 years ago. There was nothing.
Okay.
So it was like, okay, they should be using chemical-free toiletry products. Could that be a link to endometriosis? They always ask about prenatal vitamins, and we prescribe them these prenatals, in our system. But what's actually in them? Are those really the best options? Are there other supplements? We would be in these team meetings every Friday, and we talk a lot about antioxidants like CoQ10. And, you become a sponge and absorb all of this, not just from the medical side and practicing, but the questions you get from your patients. And, it's incredibly isolating for them. And wouldn't it be nice to feel like you could have something that you can do that is in your control every day that makes you feel good? And so Binto is a women's health company. We now make our own line of over-the-counter supplements and products to support women who are trying to conceive. And we even support women beyond that. So if you're young and you're dealing with hormonal imbalance or period struggles, if you are pregnant, postpartum, navigating perimenopause, or even we have customers that are in their 80s that take Binto. So now we serve this full life cycle, but fertility is really where it started and where everything stems from. So I really do believe we were one of these first companies to look at reproductive health for the full life cycle. Even though I worked at a fertility clinic, because of the field of reproductive endocrinology, you end up working with patients who aren't trying to conceive, who have other a set of symptoms or issues. And so that's where the idea for reproductive health.
I love that you're coming at it though from a genuine angle of they're not being what's missing in the market, and B, as like a woman and as a patient, what you want. And I love what you said about taking control, because as we all know, infertility, there's so much out of your control. So those little bits that you can grab, that you can control, are so important. And mentally, it makes a big difference as well.
Absolutely. I think, my little Binto pack is the one thing where I'm like, okay, at least I have this little gift that's helping me stay healthy and feel good, even when I think it's, one of the biggest things I noticed about infertility is the struggle, that relationship with my body. I don't know if other women feel this way, but your body goes through so much, so many fluctuations, and becoming pregnant and then losing it when that happens, you love your body and you want to be positive and have positive affirmations. But at the same time, I feel like I hate it. It's like this curse. Why is it just not working?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of my big therapy moments was my doctor, I think at the time, was like, you have to look at it when I kept having, recurring miscarriages. He was like, your body's actually doing what it's supposed to be doing, even though it feels like it's not, because it's getting, rid of unhealthy pregnancies.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of frame it that way. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Easier said than done. Fuck you,
I know.
But definitely. Now I kind of get it.
Absolutely. I think that was a big struggle of mine in the beginning, especially with starting Binto. And, part of the whole mission of the company is to help women with their fertility and their egg quality. And I felt like, I remember calling my mom one day and saying, I feel like that scene in Legally Blonde when Elle Woods is in the prison with, I forget the other woman, the one who's accused of murdering the husband. And she's in her orange jumpsuit and whispering in the phone to Elle, I have liposuction.
Right.
Kind of how I felt for so long, hi, I have this amazing company, but I have infertility
too.
And it feels really good that I can talk about it. And I think it makes it so much more authentic too.
Yeah,
I'm sure it will all have meaning at some point in my life when we look back on this.
Well, I feel like it already does. And the level of relatability that you have to the people that you work with on so many different levels, I think is really cool.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, okay. So let's get back to your story. So your husband and you are trying, and what happened next?
Went in to see Maureen Kelly. She's a reproductive endocrinologist here in Philly. She's on our advisory board, and she got me in immediately. I feel so well taken care of, and one of her nurses and I actually worked together at Penn. So I feel like it's so nice because I'm taken care of and I can get in when I need to.
Yeah,
which is
that
a
is
big
good
thing with fertility clinics, which that's a whole soapbox that we can get into later. But we found out I have this uterine polyp. We thought my husband had some sperm issues. COVID happened, had to wait for the polyp surgery. We tried doing it in the office and that just did not go well for me.
Okay. How long did you have to wait?
We had to wait till June.
Okay.
So it was pretty frustrating.
Were you in pain during that time?
No. Yes. The uterine cramping was happening daily at this point. And got it out, felt great for a week in June. We retested my husband's sperm. Turns out it's awesome. Got him on supplements, which, hopefully we'll have male fertility supplements soon. And we were okay to try on our own. And then that burning cramping came back. And that's when, as I mentioned earlier, we found out that I likely have endometriosis. And, we talked about going in and doing a laparoscopy, which is pretty invasive. It actually used to be a first-line treatment option for all women with endometriosis who are going through fertility treatments. And now the past couple of years, we are thinking that we need to just move forward with fertility treatments and then treat the endometriosis later if your endometriosis is not detrimentally, impacting your fertility. So some women may have big endometriomas that are on their ovaries or a fallopian tube, etc. It doesn't appear that I have those issues. From what we've seen, my tubes are open, but endometriosis is crazy. I'm lucky I got to a diagnosis when I did. Many women, it takes years of frustration to get to a diagnosis, which I don't understand why we don't listen to women when they're experiencing this set of symptoms. It's also the only other disease that really acts like cancer in the body by the way that it spreads and really attaches itself to other organs. And it can not only impact by blocking critical organs that play a role in fertility, but it can severely impact egg quality in women. So, there's a lot we have to learn about this disease, and certainly opened my eyes up more than beyond when I had patients with this. And it's staged similar to cancer. So you can have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Some women may have endometrial cells that go all the way into their brain, causing like little strokes every time they have a period. I had a patient like that at Penn, and it's really devastating how this disease can really attack the body. So yes, it is very different in other women. My periods, I really only have 1 to 2 days of cramps. They're manageable. And so I don't have that level of pain with my menstrual cycles like many women do, which is probably one of the top things you hear about when you think of endometriosis. So really the goal is to decrease inflammation. It's an inflammatory disease. It's an autoimmune disease. And I hope, Binto, we are working on some other products that are anti-inflammatory to help women who, like me, who are suffering with this.
So you weren't the kind of person that had it in high school when you had...
I think I did.
Okay, but you didn't...
I did have back cramps in high school. They put me on the pill. It wasn't diagnosed. Typical We did a campaign a couple of years ago called No One Ever Told Me.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of women have those no one ever told me.
Oh my God. If I had a
stories.
dime for every time I've said that, or somebody on my podcast has said that, it's
Exactly
all about, the reproductive education for both women and men, young women and young men. There's so much that, isn't told. Hold that thought, guys. This episode is being sponsored in part by Thrive Causemetics, an independent, woman-founded and owned beauty brand that specializes in high-performance makeup and skincare that's vegan and cruelty-free. Thrive Causemetics is a new beauty brand I've discovered, and right now they have some amazing discounted sets that are perfect for gifting to yourself or others. Plus, for every product you buy, they donate to help a woman thrive. You guys know I love female-founded and owned companies, and Thrive takes it one step further. Their mission is called Bigger Than Beauty, which means that for every purchase, they donate much-needed products and funds to nonprofit partners nationwide who are helping women facing significant challenges to thrive again. So let's talk about some of their high-performance products. Thrive's products are made with skin-loving ingredients and formulated without parabens, sulfates, and phthalates. A lot of the sets available right now include a free tube of the Thrive Causemetics best-selling Liquid Lash Extensions Mascara. This is a mascara you may have heard about, guys, that is sold every 5 seconds. It's flake-free, smudge-free, and clump-free, and it has more than 7,000 5-star reviews. It also won Glamour's Best Clean Beauty Products of 2020 award for the best mascara. So here's the fun part. You can start thriving and help women in need today by going to thrivecausemetics.com/infertileaf for 15% off your first purchase. That's Thrive, CAUSEMETICS.com/infertileaf for 15% off. Thanks, Thrive. Continuing on with you and your husband. So it's summer of the lockdown, right? And you've had your surgery. You felt good, you said, for like a week in June.
Mm-hmm. Then I get this diagnosis and we decide, okay, well, let's do letrozole and IUIs and do an HSG to make sure that your tubes are open. So July, didn't get pregnant. Then August, we did the HSG and letrozole, and I got pregnant. And sometimes I think like clearing out the tubes can really help. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying an IUI, maybe time your HSG around that. I do think it helps. But
like the dye from the HSG kind of clears it out,
flushes out the tubes.
Okay.
So got pregnant, and early September, when I was 7 weeks, went in for a scan and found out that I was miscarrying. So
sorry.
I know. It's definitely a painful, very painful experience, but very lucky to have good people surrounding me. I think having a good network is critical.
Definitely.
And we decided to do a D&E. I wasn't bleeding, and
Okay, wait, what's a D&E? Is that different from a D&C?
Yeah, it's actually called a D&E. So it's dilation and expulsion.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
No. It's okay. So that's the procedure you would get to remove the gestational sac and the pregnancy from the uterus.
Gotcha.
So had that done, we were able to test out the sac for testing, for the genetic testing. And we found out it was like this really rare genetic issue. I forget what specifically we found out it was. And that's when we all decided, okay, we're just going to go ahead to IVF.
Okay.
Even though that was really our first round of letrozole and IUI, because knowing that I have endometriosis, I was going to have a higher likelihood of abnormal eggs because it will impact your egg quality. And we wanted to be able to filter out and just put back the embryos that are going to be chromosomally normal.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So as an IVF nurse going into your own round of IVF, did you feel like you had kind of a leg up on like what to ask and what this meant? And, there's obviously so much somebody that has never done it before doesn't know. Did you feel like you were going in with like at least a little bit of an advantage educationally?
Kind of. I didn't do a nursing consult. I've taught hundreds, if not thousands of people how to do their IVF medications and what it is. And I kind of wish that we had done it more for my husband, because he would ask me about it. And I think I would just get moody and short with him, like, well, this is just how it is. Or like, it's this, why don't you know that? And then I forget that, we're in a very interesting position where I know way too much. And I've seen every worst case scenario. And I feel like I lived through the trauma of infertility with a lot of my patients.
Oh, interesting.
So, you become at least I did, which maybe is part of the problem. I really do think I am an empath, and like I would really try to get on my patient's level to understand and to be with them. But I do think that took a big toll on me mentally. Okay. To make those calls, to tell someone they're not pregnant is also really challenging. So just remember that. Like if you're ever frustrated at your IVF nurse or your doctor, just remember they are in it. They really are in it with you. And to make those bad calls is extremely painful.
Right. So
but, no one wants to do that.
You had to make those calls with people that you'd been on the journey with them, right?
Yeah. And then to be on the other end, as you asked, was weird. I felt, I knew everything, but I knew nothing at the same time.
That's so interesting that you say that.
Yeah. You come up with so many other questions as a patient that, let's say for my pregnancy, I'm like, I don't remember my patients talking about this symptom, or I don't remember, did they have symptoms with it? Did they, and your mind spirals. And
yeah, I would imagine it's a bit of like information overload where like,
exactly.
Like you said, too much almost like, I've said this before, but when I was going through it, I did one round of IVF and I got very lucky and our one healthy embryo did work. And I now have a 5-year-old son after secondary infertility, but I didn't know, I swear, and maybe I'm wrong, but when they called me to tell me I was pregnant, it wasn't like your beta is this number and come in again to get your second beta like people do now. They were just like, you're pregnant. Call us when you deliver. And I swear that's all they told me. And I was like, okay.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy. I wasn't monitoring it super closely. And I almost feel lucky that I wasn't, because I feel like that's so stressful. And now so many people know so much about numbers and facts, and you see everybody on Instagram and you're comparing to other people, like I just wasn't in that world. I was like a little bit, I guess, naive and kind of clueless, but maybe like in the ignorance is bliss kind of way for that portion of it, at least.
I think that's awesome. I'm so lucky in that I have a huge group of people that I can call on, text, chat with. And I think infertility, like I said, is very isolating for a lot of people. And a lot of you out there might not feel comfortable talking about it with anyone. And, that's okay if that's what you need. But I do think it's healthy to have a support system and to talk about these things.
Yeah.
But I went through a transfer cycle, as I told you before the call, in December. And I felt pressure from a lot of people to start testing with the HCG strips starting on, I think the big thing is like day 5 post transfer. The nurse in me knows this is ridiculous. Don't test. Don't ever do that. If you're
why? Like, what's the nurse in you saying don't?
Because we know that so many of these drugs can alter the results of a pregnancy test. I was pregnant and I tested and I got negative tests. So home pregnancy tests don't work for me. Same thing happened with my IUI when I got pregnant, and I should have known. Like the voice in the back of my head was like, these don't work for you. Why are you testing? But I felt like, well, like you said, it's a numbers thing and everyone wants the data and to track every little thing. And, people ask us, what other products we're going to make at Vinto? Are you going to make ovulation predictor kits or pregnancy test kits? And, I think those things are great. I've had a very negative experience with them. I think a lot of people have. And until we can invent or manufacture a much better product that makes you feel good rather than a failure every time you're peeing on one of these things, then I don't want to make that.
Interesting.
So if you're listening, and you're going through a transfer cycle and you're thinking about testing early, I, from fertility nurse Susie, would recommend just wait for the beta HCG and for your nurse to call you, because then they can really hold your hand and walk you through those next steps.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
Sitting with it alone and going through that roller coaster of emotions.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. What are some other things that you would say as Nurse Susie to people that are just starting out on, the IUI or IVF journey?
Well, my biggest thing now in all of this is that hormones aren't everything. There's been a big trend over the past couple of years to look at anti-Müllerian hormone as a predictor of fertility. Right. And we actually only use that in IVF clinics to help determine your medication protocol and how you will respond to drugs.
Okay.
But a lot of people, media, companies, whatever it is, use this as a marketing ploy that, we can test your hormones and this will help us determine or help you guide your fertility journey. And, I have perfect hormones. My ovarian reserve looks incredible, yet I have infertility. You could also have an AMH of like 0 point whatever and get pregnant that month. So hormones are not a predictor of whether or not you go out and try to get pregnant that month, if you will conceive. So take those hormone tests with a huge grain of salt. Your AMH can also change from month to month a little bit. It can vary. So if you're someone who just got a diagnosis of DOR, there are some things that you can do and really work with your physician to figure that out.
Okay.
So just don't take that as like an end all be all. That's my biggest thing, because there's so many other components that go into fertility, including sperm, your partner's sperm, your lifestyle, your environment, your uterus, so the whole anatomy of your reproductive organs. All of that plays into your fertility. So that's probably one of the biggest things that I would say.
Isn't it crazy when sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, when you think about all the factors that have to line up for a pregnancy, a healthy pregnancy and a live birth to occur, isn't that wild?
I know. It's such a miracle.
Once you know so much about how so much can go wrong, it's like when it happens, you're like, holy shit, how did that ever work?
I know. It's so great. I look back at my days at Hanavan when I did L&D and postpartum and NICU, and I'm like, wow, how, all those little babies are such miracles. And that it even happens.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I do agree with you.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I cut you off though. You were going to say something else.
Oh no, I was just going to say that there are little things that you can do as well. So for me, control is my biggest thing. And I think time is part of that. And I'm sure there are some of you out there who feel, that pressure of time when it comes to fertility, whether it's a biological clock or it's your own timeline that you had envisioned for yourself in building a family. I totally get that. And it's natural to feel that way. There's nothing you can do to change it, which really sucks. But that's where those things that you can do that are in your control are going to make such a big difference. And for me, that was really deciding what are those extra things that I want to do to help me in my journey. I tried acupuncture. I've done acupuncture before, but for some reason for fertility, I really don't like it. I think it made my burning cramping worse. So I actually turned towards Reiki and I have fallen in love with it. It's very healing. And I basically meditate and fall asleep for an hour when I do it.
That sounds dreamy.
And every time I've done this with a practitioner, I get pregnant. So I really do think it has helped. So that's like a modality that I really have come to love. So you need to find your thing and go for it. I think mental health is critical. So therapy, I can't stress that enough. Find a therapist who is going to be there to support you. I had been working with a therapist who kind of made me feel like my infertility was my own fault, that I had, quote, some block. And that's really what the endometriosis was. And no therapist should ever tell you that. So if you are in a therapeutic relationship like that, like get out and work with someone who is going to change that, because infertility is no one's fault ever. There's no blame. And then I think, like I said, taking my Binto every night makes me feel great. Knowing that I had edited my packs a lot, and I really think it helped my uterine health tremendously. And that's when I started getting pregnant. And then diet. But I'm not hard on myself. I think we can really go down a rabbit hole of cutting things out. And again, this goes back to that whole body image component that comes into infertility. So I have really changed my relationship with food to like things that are going to nourish me and that make me feel good.
Yes.
And then it's made it so much easier for me. And I'm a very healthy person naturally. So that has made it easier for me to be like, okay, it's fine if I have some chocolate, like that's not going to be detrimental to my egg quality, or like, you have to shift your thoughts.
Well, I love the notion of, instead of restricting so much, adding things that nourish you. I like that mindset a lot, because I think a lot of us growing up, it's so hard, female body image and all that, eating disorders and whatnot, pressures from your friends. A lot of us grew up thinking like, you have to restrict, you have to restrict, you have to restrict. And it wasn't until I was like hit 40 that I was like, I need, like, body is fuel. I want to be healthy, So like, if you look at it from that point of view, it took me 4 decades to like kind of have a healthy relationship with food. And now thankfully I do. And, but I think a lot of it has to do with not restricting so much as adding, like you said. So Susie, what's next for you guys, and where are you guys at right now?
My frozen embryo transfer in December did work. We got pregnant, but it looks like it may be another miscarriage. So unfortunately, I know, I'm like, we're still in the throes of our story, but we are, I think, likely going to move ahead with another retrieval. We do still have frozen embryos from that first cycle, but I really want to focus a little bit more, mixing some things up to really work on that egg quality that, as I mentioned, is so critical with endometriosis. So we're going to likely do another egg retrieval probably in February, because I have to let my body pass everything, and then I guess transfer again in the spring. So we are still definitely in the throes of our journey.
Yeah.
I'm lucky because I do have a lot of answers in a world where for so many things are very unknown. And one of the things that helps us continue is that I do think I'm still young-ish. I just turned 32.
So young. Are you kidding?
I know. I thought,
oh my God, you founded a company and like you've done all this stuff. You're a baby.
Yes. I know. I feel old though, but yes, we're still young and we have so many resources at our fingertips. So
yes,
we're hopeful that we'll be able to use my own eggs and that I could carry a pregnancy. But having lived in this world for such a long time, we also know that donor egg is a possibility, and it's a beautiful possibility. And 2 of my first cousins have children via donor egg, and they are incredible. And so we're, I think resilience is key. It's really hard to dig deep and keep going, but I compare it a lot to Binto and having a startup where, my God, I didn't realize how much it would prepare me for infertility because you're told no so much as a female in business, especially when it comes to women's health. And, I take no as it comes. Sometimes I listen to it if it seems right and accurate. And other times you have to understand that you can't take no for an answer and that you need to keep pushing forward. So that is where we are. And we're excited about the future and terrified. Just like I'm sure a lot of you are who are listening.
All right, right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to my conversation with Susie. And Susie, thank you so much. I am rooting for you guys as your journey continues. So guys, also, I wanted to remind you to please check out Fertility Rally, which is a 24/7 community and content hub and support group where you can get everything that you need while you're going through and navigating these shitty and rocky waters. So check us out on Instagram. Our site is being revamped right now. So check us out on the gram at Fertility Rally. Our membership is open. We have monthly and annual memberships, and we would love for you to become a part of the fam. And as I always say, it is the worst club with the best members, and it's also the place I wish that I had when I was going through it. So hope to see you guys there, and I'll talk to you next time.